The Altseason strategy and also the rotation between the different assets, a very vital topic that is worth understanding, because if you understand this, you can very likely make life-changing profits within the bull run. And really understanding the different phases of the market cycles gives you a leg up in making your decisions on your crypto journey. As you may know, I have a community. It's called the Crypto Alliance community. And within that community, I get asked questions every day. And it's very interesting because today I not only received this very same question from a community member, but I also had a good friend reach out to me that I consult for crypto investing. And both of them were asking about Ripple or XRP. So let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, let me show you the question that was given by one of my community members. So you can see here, Cheapo is asking, I've been reading more about XRP and the potential it holds for future international payments. Some analysts are crazy bullish about it for long-term predictions. And then they ask for my opinion. And now that we are in altcoin season, would you feel it's wise to dollar cost average into XRP as well? Or would you focus more on ETH? And then he says, I am assuming will DCA back into Bitcoin again when the bull run is closer. And probably he means as the bull run comes to an end, what do you do then? Do you secure your profits in stable coins? That is probably what most of you will do. Or do you have a long-term vision where you just hold on to your Bitcoin? But he is assuming that I secure my profit in stable coins. And then on the way down in the bear market, when it gets closer to the next bull run starting again, we would slowly buy back into the appreciating asset, which is Bitcoin. So I'm going to answer all of this in this video, and I think it is a fascinating topic. And first, I will go to a infographic that I made here for you. And essentially, we're going to understand what is known as the crypto capital rotation. So I bring it here into the middle of the screen. And what is 5 different phases of the crypto capital rotation? And at the top, we're going to start with Bitcoin, assuming that during the bull run, most people will probably at the beginning, as Chipo alluded to, start with investing into Bitcoin, whether that is a lump sum investment or whether that is dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. Then we have a certain moment where the funds slowly start to flow from Bitcoin into Ethereum. And what happens in that moment is that Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin. Then, after the Ethereum phase of the market, there is going to be a phase as we inch closer to the end of the bull run where the funds flow into what we call large cap alternative coins. So those would be your Solanas, your Suis, your Aptoses, your hyperliquids, just large cap altcoins. And then after that phase, the money flows into the mid to low cap coins and also the meme coins. And then we have the apex of the bull run, and most people will switch back into stable coins. Some will secure their profits back into Bitcoin, understanding that yes, Bitcoin will drop, but they expect Bitcoin not to drastically drop anymore because it has become an institutionalized asset. And that is, by the way, the position that I am holding. So I will probably switch a good amount into stablecoins, but the vast majority I will likely keep in Bitcoin, also because I operate on a cash flow system where I use Bitcoin as my base treasury against which I constantly borrow funds so that I can work with that. And that, if that is something, by the way, that you are interested in learning a little bit more, I do have a free course for you. All you have to do is go here to the landing page, crypto.lifestyle. But let's continue the conversation. It's a very interesting one. Here is another infographic that actually I designed this morning. This is, what's the date? We're August 14th of the year 2025. And this is current today, right? So yesterday we had a huge outflow of Bitcoin into Ethereum. And you see here, Ethereum is up 60% within the last 30 days. And we have 7 times more inflows in Ethereum than into Bitcoin. And that is very powerful. So that teaches us, or that tells us, that right now we are in that phase where you see the arrow between Bitcoin and Ethereum. By the way, that doesn't mean necessarily that Bitcoin will not appreciate anymore. It just means that Ethereum outpaces the growth of Bitcoin. So here's something that is very important to understand, and that is that the best way to position yourself is to always be a step ahead of the cycle, right? So when everybody's screaming Ethereum, as it is right now, your best positioning to really maximize your gains is not to buy more Ethereum, but to buy into the large cap altcoins right now, which is why I have actually spent the past week investing into Solana and Sui, okay? Because those are large cap altcoins. And I very soon, I cannot predict the future, but I believe that as soon as the Ethereum phase is over and we go into the large caps, I'm so well positioned that I can not only 2 or 3x my portfolio, but I can potentially 10x, 20x, and later with the meme coins, there's definitely some possibility to 50x, 100x my portfolio. So in essence, what we're seeing here is a movement from the least risky asset to the riskiest asset, right? So Bitcoin in the world of crypto being the least riskiest. So that is very important to understand. Now let's talk about Ripple for a moment, and then I'm going to show you a very powerful dashboard that I have built for my community. And that dashboard actually gives you in real time information looking at specific metrics on where we are in the cycle. So that is obviously very helpful if you had access to that dashboard. It is for my paid members only, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek today. Okay, back to Ripple. What is Ripple? And whenever people talk about a coin and they say, wow, it has really increased and appreciated a lot, you have to understand that there's 2 reasons why a coin might appreciate. The first one is because it has tremendous support, very positive public relations. They're just doing a great job in having a lot of supporters, which is the case for Ripple slash XRP, by the way. There's quite literally an XRP army out there, and all they're doing is they're pushing and advocating for this asset. And I don't know why they're so good. It must be that Ripple has leadership that is really good in understanding how powerful just public relations is. Because if one thing that applies in business, in life, and also in crypto, then it is that it's not the best, it's the best known that will win. Okay. And we know that from actually the tremendous success that meme coins have. There was a time, it probably still is, where meme coins such as Fartcoin, Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, Goatius, all of these coins that have absolutely close to zero real world utility are vastly outperforming very useful coins, right? And that is because it's not the best, but it's the best known who will win. So One thing to know is that Ripple does have tremendous social support. They have a lot of advocacy going for them. And that is why recently, in the month of June, Ripple saw a tremendous increase of their value. And so that, let's just say that is the one reason why a coin might appreciate. It's just simply because it is popular. But you also have to look at the second aspect, and that is, what value is the coin actually giving to the world? What is the value proposition? And with XRP in particular, without going into deep detail, what they're trying to solve is settlement between banks for international transfers. In other words, right now, if you are familiar with how banks transfer money between each other, it is a very old, somewhat antiquated system called SWIFT. It's actually also very vulnerable because SWIFT has already been hacked. But not only is it vulnerable, it is also very slow. That's actually the biggest problem, because if money transfers are slow, there's always this period where there's a transition phase where the money is in transit and nobody can really do anything with it. Now, of course, I do think that the banks benefit a little bit from that. While it is in transit, someone makes money with that money, right? By making it work. But that is a very different topic. So what Ripple tries to solve is they basically want to replace the SWIFT system. So we have to ask ourselves, how realistic and how close are we with that happening? And I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm saying it is a very ambitious task, and the road to truly implementing that and making that a reality is still long. It is not an unrealistic road, but it is a long road to take. And what I did personally, I always do that. I did my research. I asked the opinion of all the AIs, and they say yes, they have had some initial good case studies, but they're really far away from fully implementing this. Which means that if you're asking if Ripple is a good investment, I think it could be, but definitely not focusing only on the current bull run. It could be a great investment for the long run, because if they do manage to replace the SWIFT system, then this will be a great investment. Okay. But for now, I personally hold the belief that that Ripple has already had its big run for this cycle. So you're going to ask me, why are you saying this? And I'm going to try and show you right now why I'm saying that. And to show you, I'll have to share my screen with you for a moment, which I will do. And then we will learn why that might be the case, that Ripple has already had its hooray, as we say, right? As you may know, let me actually backtrack here. So one way of looking at how has this coin performed in this cycle is comparing it to Bitcoin. So we look at the coin, not how it compares against the US dollar, how most of us think, but we look at the coin, how it compares against Bitcoin. And then we get somewhat of a sense, you will see, to how much room there is still to the upside to really extract some value. Okay, going back. So first of all, I want to look at the chart Ethereum against Bitcoin, just because currently that is what everybody's talking about, right? So what you're seeing here is, for the longest time, we have actually had Bitcoin outperforming Ethereum. And we see that. I'm saying that because when you compare Ethereum against Bitcoin, let me do this. So when you compare Ethereum against Bitcoin, you can see that it was a downwards trend until this moment here in time. So we are in April 21st. That is the moment where all of a sudden Ethereum against Bitcoin is an upwards movement. Okay. So you understand what I'm trying to say here. By the way, we're looking at a very long time frame here. I have the weekly, you see here, this is a weekly chart. This is a weekly chart. And so that means that each bar that you see here represents a week. What we will do now, however, is we'll look at other coins. You get the idea with Ethereum. This is the reason here, by the way, why we are currently in the middle of the Ethereum phase, where everything has rotated towards Ethereum. So what we're trying to look now is at the other large cap coins. Remember that we have this situation here where we have the rotation from Bitcoin into Ethereum into large cap altcoins. And of course, what I want to do now is I want to look at the chart of those large cap altcoins. And we're going to look at Solana against Bitcoin, Sui against Bitcoin, Doge against Bitcoin, which is a meme coin, BNB against Bitcoin, and also XRP against Bitcoin. And then we're going to try to see, is there a difference between all of these large caps, the chart against Bitcoin and XRP, which then leads us to making a decision of whether we think XRP is something we want to buy now or not. Are you ready for that? I think you are. You just cannot wait to see the charts again. Here we go. Okay, so first, Solana against Bitcoin. So this is the Solana against Bitcoin chart. And what I want you to see is that we have certainly here a level where there's an upper resistance. But what this chart tells me is that there is a behavior of Solana that quite literally just goes sideways at this level. And even if I scroll out a little bit, I can extend this to the inception of Solana here. And we see this is really a ceiling for Solana. In the past, since January, actually, you can see Solana lost against Bitcoin, but now it's evening out. There's this double bottom situation here. We're going sideways, but as soon as we will see Solana outperform Bitcoin here, that might be also the time when we move from Ethereum to the large cap season. But what is important to note is that we have space here between where we are now and that ceiling. So what I want to look at next is SUI. Same idea, right? Can we identify some sort of a ceiling on the chart SUI against Bitcoin? And I would say there is definitely one here, right? Actually lower. So here. So there is, SUI has already started outperforming Bitcoin, and there is definitely room here, a little bit room left. So this, okay, but there's not as much room as Solana has. By the way, if you haven't noticed, what I take from this is that Solana is probably a great buy for the next phase. Okay, so next we're going to look at BNB. We're going through the same exercise. I'm going to a high time frame. Okay, and it looks BNB against Bitcoin. We have definitely a ceiling here. Okay, and then let's see, we have one here. So I'm also going to draw this level here. So in other words, we have a room. Maybe it goes to here. If we get very lucky, it goes to here. So BNB definitely also interesting, right? Also interesting against Bitcoin. Definitely a large cap alternative coin that is going, in my opinion, to be on fire in the next part of the cycle. Ethereum we have already looked at. We're doing our exercise here. We have our ceiling that we're going to put in right here. So yeah, there's still a good amount of room left. So definitely being in Ethereum right now is still a good idea. And then finally we'll get, I wanted to look at Doge, which is a meme coin. Wow. Okay. So same thing. We have, it's not really a horizontal line that I would draw here, but I would draw this downslope here. And then I would draw a horizontal ceiling, maybe like here, if I had to put one. So definitely also here's another one, right? So let's see, yeah, here. So we have room there as well to go up maybe to here. And if we get lucky, even here. But there's room to the upside. That's the point of this exercise. Now we will look at Ripple. And I'm going to go and zoom out. Okay. And then I will have to draw my level here. Okay. I'm not really looking at this because that is too long ago. This was in 2019. So yeah, not too interested, but anything here after 2019 against Bitcoin, that seems to be the upper ceiling. And what are you noticing? It's already there, right? It has definitely had an enormous uplift here in this phase, which was the Trump pump, right? That was November. So that was when Trump won the elections. And then it has had a good moment here. So that was in June here. But now, yeah, no, this is not one of the large caps that I'm gonna buy. Is not. What do you think? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. When you look at this, what is your favorite coin? If you have some money to invest in the remaining part of the cycle, where would you bet? Which coin would you bet on? I can tell you, for me, Solana really looks good. Look at that. We have so much room to the upside here. And so I'm definitely going to pick Solana. I'm also making an allocation to Sui. I'm making an allocation to BNB. And I have already made an allocation to Dogecoin. Beautiful. Now, I promised you I will give you a sneak peek to the dashboard I built that helps us all understand where could we potentially find ourselves within this cycle. And it's a very powerful dashboard. I spent a lot of time developing it, and I'm very proud to showcase it to you here in about a moment. Okay, here's the dashboard. We have crypto capital rotation dashboard. I refresh the data, so it's a real-time dashboard, and it pulls in important metrics that help us determine where we are. And it tells us currently we are in the Ethereum transition phase. It does that based on Bitcoin dominance, Ethereum dominance, the Bitcoin ETH ratio, and then it tells us about the current strategy. So it says currently rotate 20 to 30% from Bitcoin to Ethereum, position yourselves in DeFi blue chips, watch for layer one opportunities, but maintain a Bitcoin core position. And what to watch for? Ethereum dominance breaking 15%. That would announce that we're slowly going into the next phase for large cap alts outperforming ETH, sector rotation beginning, and so on and so forth. This is very important to look at. And yeah, let's look at that. Let's look at ETH dominance. Let's look at a chart like that. So ETH dominance chart. So you saw the tool. It says as soon as we are breaking through 15% in terms of dominance, let me actually mark that here. So that would be here. As soon as the ETH dominance goes through that, we're going into very heavy altcoin territory. And that is where, again, I'm repeating myself, it gets interesting and you could make life-changing money. Listen, it's very important for me to tell you, though, is you don't have to be part of every part of the cycle. is not necessarily that you are the hero of the cycle. If you have made profits, if you are happy with your financial situation, it is okay to just take profits right now, here, today. We've seen an amazing bull run, and I just want you to play this game with yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. As long as you have made profits, as long as your finances work for you, that is what's the most important, okay? Because you got to be very careful. Most people lose money in this game. So if you are in a position where you are made money, where you have made money, or you're making money, then please make sure it stays like that. Now, what is very important to know about me is that I am actually living a crypto lifestyle, just as it says here, meaning I use a base working capital pack and I create daily income based on funding the markets. It's known as being a liquidity provider. If you are interested in that, because I can tell you most crypto folks don't even know about that, you know what I'm going to say is go to Crypto the Lifestyle, start to learn from me and listen to me. If this video was helpful to you, please don't forget to subscribe, to share it with someone who you might think might benefit from this. All right, thank you so much, and I see you in the next video.